All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Kelsey Rettke. I'm the editor of the Daily Chronicle. I'm joined today by our DeKalb City reporter, Megann Horstead, and our three candidates running for the DeKalb City Clerk's office. I do want to preference this by saying that all three of our candidates are running as write-in candidates. So none of their names will appear on the ballot, and nobody's names will appear on the ballot. But if you want to vote for any of these three, all you have to do is write their names in when you get to the ballot. So we're going to go ahead and get started with Lynn first. And I just want to say also Lynn is joining us via video and then also audio, just for her sake. So Lynn, if you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running.
Oh, sure. Well, I've had relevant experience both inside and outside of City Hall, and specifically to the clerk's office. Outside, I've had experience with customer and client services for decades, and also office management. Inside City Hall, I served on the Citizens Environmental Commission 2006 to 2008. And I was appointed as DeKalb City Clerk in August of 2018. And I served in that office to the end of the term in May 2021. I did obtain some specialized training in the clerk's duties while I was in office. I also have volunteer work that I've done since 2005. I'm a local issues analyst and blogger, and that has helped equip me for the job as well, because I've been watching and writing specifically about the clerk's office for more than a decade, and I've gotten to know other clerks and former clerks. So, in other words, I'm acutely aware of the challenges in the clerk's office, as well as what it could and maybe should be. I'm running for two main reasons. Most of all, I was inspired by the referendum results saying that 67% of DeKalb voters wanted to keep their elected clerk. I didn't know what to expect. This surprised me. This delighted me. And I thought, okay, this is really our chance to have some momentum and get the clerk's office back on track. So the 67%, in my view, is a mandate, and I'm committed to taking that mandate to City Hall. I also want to mention that I was dismayed to see an unelected staff person in place of the clerk when the Municipal Electoral Board met to hear objections to nominating petitions also last November. I believe it was a violation of the election code to do that, and I would not like to see that again. So that's another reason that I'm running. My priorities where duties are involved are elections and city meetings, but also a top priority is the viability of the clerk's office itself, starting with addressing the causes of the extreme turnover in office. And I will stop there, except to say thanks for doing this and thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Lynn. And we'll go ahead and do Brad next. Brad, if you want to introduce yourself a little
Sure.
and tell us about why you're running.
Thank you. Well, I'd also like to echo what Lynn said about thanking the Daily Chronicle and Shaw Media for providing these opportunities. One, it gives the voters a chance to get to know the candidates a little bit better, and it gets us an opportunity to state our positions. So, you have a variety of media formats to be able to capture that. So, uh, Bradley Hoey, longtime resident of DeKalb, multiple decades, 30 plus decades here in DeKalb. I was born in DeKalb, but was not raised in DeKalb. But I did attend Northern Illinois University. I'm a graduate of Northern Illinois University. I came back and worked for NIU for 30 years in a variety of capacities, but Mostly my professional life has been in one, the media, two, communications as a broader field. I was the director of communications for NIU, and I was also the spokesperson for the university for a number of years. I am running for clerk in similar capacity that Lynn, and I think Steve has echoed this before. There has been a great deal of turnover within that office over the last decade or so. It's been essentially a revolving door. And what I'd like to do is try to bring a little bit of continuity, professionalism, and I think respectability to the office. I've said it in multiple forums and in multiple uh, locations that the last elected official did this community a disservice. He did the office a disservice and was an embarrassment to the community and to the office. And we can't have that kind of disdain for government, disdain for the office of clerk or any office in municipal government. It just doesn't work. And that's primarily the reason that I'm running. I want to bring some continuity. I do think that we have a good group of staff people that are in City Hall at this time. I do believe that we have a good group of elected officials in City Hall at this time. And I serve as the chair of the Citizens Community Enhancement Commission. I've been on that commission for a number of years. I've been in the chair for about 3 or 4 years. And so I've seen the operation of City Hall firsthand, not on a daily basis, but quite often. I worked with our elected leaders. I worked with our staff and team there. And I would be excited to be able to do that as an elected official, work closely with our elected officials within the municipality and the staff, and also represent the citizens to the best of my ability in the office of city clerk.
Thanks so much, Brad. Steve, you can go next. Why don't you tell us a little about yourself and why you're running?
Yes. Well, I moved to DeKalb in 1980 to attend NIU. I got my bachelor's degree in economics. I like to joke that I have a BS degree, and so therefore don't ask me about economic theory. But in any event, I decided to stay in DeKalb and have made it my home since. I've been involved in many community activities. I got involved in elected office when I fought the post office, the infamous post office battle, to save the historic building from a city subsidy to demolish it and bring in a Walgreens. I served 12 years on the city council from 2009 to 2012. Excuse me, from 1995 to 07, and 3 years as city clerk from 09 to 2012. And in that time as city clerk, I attended the ICMA, IMCA training, the Illinois Municipal Clerks Association. They hold those once a year, and went through those sessions. I was the FOIA officer as clerk, so I processed the Freedom of Information requests to the city. I enhanced that by scanning in the requests, the FOIA requests, instead of putting the paper in the appropriate department's mailbox. I would scan them in and email directly to the department so that they could begin working on them right away. For the past 8 years, I've held the position of file maintenance clerk at the jewel store in Sycamore, where I coordinate the price changes twice a week and fix errors that come down in those batches that change the prices. And then also, too, I maintain the address system of all the products on the shelves. So each item on the shelf has an address. These skills would transfer pretty well to the city clerk's office, in addition to my experience in handling meeting minutes, ordinances, and other documents. As far as motivation is concerned, I want to restore the clerk and the respect for the clerk, just as Brad was saying, because after I resigned in 2012, the city chose to, at the direction and the suggestion of the city manager, to basically gut the office, and it has not attracted people to either, if they were of quality, they wouldn't stay.
You're
And
at about your 3 minutes, Steve, just so you know. So if you could wrap it up, that'd be awesome.
so I think that we need to restore that, whether it's part-time or full-time, that office should be restored.
Thank you. The next question is up, and this one goes to Brad. How would you describe the role of the city clerk? Do you believe the office of the clerk is currently set up to best carry out that role? Why or why not?
Well, the office as it currently stands, I mean, we've talked about, you're essentially the official keeper of record and documents for the city. So you're doing the business of the city of DeKalb. You're keeping meeting minutes, you're preparing meeting minutes, and you're informing not only the citizens and the voters of what is going on with the city of DeKalb and on the business side. Right now, the reason that there is an appointed clerk is that because of the situations that have happened over the last several years, particularly, as we mentioned, with the last elected clerk, the city's hand was forced to be able to make this into at least for right now, the duties of clerk as an appointed position. And as Lynn mentioned during her opening statement, that the citizens have voted overwhelmingly that they want that to be an elected position. And I think right now, what we would like to do, all of us I'd like to do, is to serve in that role, reassume the duties of city clerk as a voted elected official, but also work with staff to be able to keep the office running, to keep the office moving effectively and efficiently. I think that the staff, under some extraordinary circumstances, and the city has done that over the last several months. Once the sitting clerk, the elected clerk, was finally removed from office. So my goal is to be able to perform the duties of clerk as they are through municipal code or through the state of Illinois, and then also work with city staff and elected officials to be able to perform those duties efficiently and effectively and serve the great citizens of DeKalb to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Steve, same question. How would you describe the role of the city clerk? Do you believe the office of the clerk is currently set up to best carry out that role? Why or why not?
Well, the basic role of the city clerk is to maintain the city records. And that is one of the important things about it being elected rather than appointed, is that you're entrusting someone to maintain those records and the integrity of those records as an elected person accountable to the voters. And so that's where you don't want the conflict of interest within an administration with an appointed position. And that's, I think, why the voters chose to do that. It's not structured. The main problem with it in the last 13 years has been that it is unpaid. Well, it's unpaid now, but when they established the part-time position 13 years ago, it was a $4,000 salary locked in for the 4 years. And they had a series of clerks, high turnover, and the final clerk they raised the salary to $8,000, and he was the only one that filed. And as Brad said, that was a disaster. Although Brad, I think he was removed some more than a month ago.
I said several months ago.
I think it was at least a year. I think, wasn't it?
I
Anyway,
believe it was February of 2024, if I remember correctly.
okay.
Yeah.
In any event, that it has to be, I think it has to be restored to a fairly paid position to attract viable candidates. The question is, the next 4 years, it's unpaid. So as you may notice, the three of us running I'm about to retire, and the other two have retired. And that's the only people that would be able to run for this office. And I think that that's not appropriate for the long term.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Lynn, same question. How would you describe the role of the city clerk? Do you believe the office of the clerk is currently set up to best carry out that role? Why or why not?
Well, when it comes to the elected city clerk, they're part of a system of checks and balances. I mean, we talk about that a lot on the federal level, but at the local level, here's how it goes. The city council is the legislative body, and then you have the CEO, the executive function that's vested in the city manager's office, and your elected clerk is about process. It's about how things are done. And it's a role where somebody who can be kind of nitpicky is going to do well, and it's going to be a great asset. If you've ever thought, and I have a lot, I mean, I've been a city watcher since 2005, and a lot of times I'm thinking, I don't mind what they're doing, but I don't like how they're doing it. And the city takes shortcuts that they probably shouldn't. I don't want to go into detail with that because I want to get to what the opportunity that's arisen. And that is, there is no clerk. There hasn't been a clerk. Those duties and responsibilities have been spread over at least 2-3 departments. And so there's opportunity there. Another thing that happened is that as a result of litigation, the city got permission from the courts to transfer a lot of the statutory duties from the clerk to that executive assistant position. Now, that in a way that's bad because there are some places where the buck needs to stop with that elected clerk. But how they wrote Chapter 3.14, is that both the executive assistant and the city clerk have these roles, and so there's dual territory, dual responsibilities. But both people can do these jobs. So what this means is a whole lot of flexibility in the clerk's office. I've talked to a lot of clerks through my professional organizations and things. City clerks are just such very flexible positions. One of the reasons for that is the clerk's job it has statutory duties, but those statutory duties they're fairly few in number. So if you're talking about a very small municipality, and maybe
you're at about your time, Lynn, just so you know, if you want to wrap it up. You can wrap it up.
Oh, okay.
About your time.
Yeah, I'm saying whether full-time, part-time, the duties are the duties and how you put it together are very flexible. But I do believe that something really badly broke when they made the job part-time. So I think you need to do something to create that full-time spot again.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna move on to our next question. Steve, you can answer this one first. So I want to talk a little about the candidacy process. I know some of you have mentioned before, your reasons for running, restore XYZ to the office. I think Lynn, I remember you mentioned at a previous forum that, you hadn't anticipated potentially going back to public office. And we know that nobody's name is going to be on the ballot in April because nobody filed for that initial candidacy window, and you guys did file for the write-in candidacy. But there has been this trend in the clerk's office over the last decade or so of either not enough people filing for the ballot, maybe no names on the ballot, maybe one name on the ballot. Steve, if you want to answer this one first, why didn't you file last November in time to get your name on the ballot? And what changed your mind about running that led you to seek a write-in campaign?
Well, I've been involved with the Democratic Party and was working on campaigns for the November election. And the filing deadline was, I'm trying to think, only a week or so after the election, maybe 10 days. I'm not sure exactly. I don't recall, but it was a very short time window to consider collecting collecting 200 signatures, and generally you have to collect more to make sure that there aren't any that are not valid. And I suspect that that's probably why. Well, that's one reason. The other reason is that it's unpaid, and the city has had trouble with this for the last 13 years, when it was $4,000 a year for the first two terms that were elected since that time, and $8,000 for the last time. But neither one of those salaries attracted a candidate that was good and willing to stay.
All right, thank you, Steve. Same question to you, Lynn. You can go next. Why didn't you file last November in time to get your name on the ballot? And then what changed your mind and led you to want to run as a write-in candidate?
Right. Well, as I said, I really didn't see myself running again. And it was the referendum results that changed my mind and got me to thinking about it and considering it. So the filing deadline was short. The clerk candidate has to get as many signatures as the mayoral candidate does, and so that's going to take a little while. And but I believe that there are other good reasons. I mean, for people not running and not filing. Of course, zero compensation is kind of a downer. I mean, it's reflective of a kind of hostility that maybe we should acknowledge. Also, the structure of the job, again, you're going back to that full-time, part-time thing. Also, I don't think anybody who listens to meetings and listens to the mayor on the radio and so forth can escape the fact that there's a toxic leadership culture over at City Hall. And the clerk has long been a target of that. I mean, if you look at, like we were talking, the other candidates were talking about, the last disastrous clerk. And yeah, I'm not going to defend him. He was bad. But another person who got elected to this office in 2013 only lasted 14 months. And it was because of bullying. And so we're talking about a lot of pressure on somebody, and it always seems to be one-sided. So, for example, I've noticed that we talk about, how is the clerk going to work with the staff and all that? And sure, yes, the clerk should work with the staff, and the clerk should work with the council. But when do we insist, and that's why I think this latest referendum is important, when do we insist that the city manager's office and the council work with the clerk? That's actually a statutory obligation too. State law says that the city needs to give the clerk the support and the tools to do the job. And that hasn't always happened. I would say probably one of the biggest problems that I had as city clerk was not having the information that I needed to do my job right. It kind of an exclusionary tactics. And that was systematic, and it we've got to tweak the culture a little bit there, and it's not good. And I think what we need to do is call out bullying tactics when they occur, and that is something that I plan to do if I'm elected.
Thanks so much, Lynn. Brad, you're next with this question. Can you tell us a little about why you didn't file last November in time to get your name on the ballot, and what changed your mind wanting to run a write-in campaign?
Well, I mean, I have to admit that running for clerk was not on my radar back in November. I do have a part-time job. I am working with the DeKalb County Convention and Visitors Bureau. But as the months pass in my role with the Enhancement Commission I felt that in the concern that I had, of course, once the referendum was settled, once that the dust had settled for that in that situation, I wanted to be able to throw my hat in the ring because I was concerned of what might happen 4 years ago, where we would get an individual into the office and would one have disdain for the office and be disruptive. And I just felt that was something that we couldn't have. And I filed around the same time that I think that Steve and Lynn did, and they both served in that role, and I wanted to be able to offer voters maybe another choice, and somebody that I think people are familiar with, somebody who has been involved in community service for a long, long time, who has a similar skill set when it comes to communications. I have been a FOIA officer. I am intimately familiar with the Open Meeting Act, and I have worked with government officials. Most of my professional career, I've worked with government officials, so I'm familiar with that role and those responsibilities. And so by the time that all these processes came, it was the only option was to file as a write-in candidate.
Thank you, Brad.
All right. Speaking of the referendum, that's our next question. DeKalb voters in November rejected an advisory referendum which asked for public opinion on whether to keep the city clerk's office in elected or appointed role. This was the third such referendum to have this outcome. The others were in 2006 and 2013. Do you agree that this office should remain an elected one? Why or why not? Lynn?
I absolutely believe that the clerk should be elected. And we have an opportunity here to support democracy, really. And I was not only glad that the city clerk is to remain elected, and but also Sycamore did the same thing. And oh, by the way, they didn't say, "Oh, we're going to cut compensation if the Sycamore people keep the elected clerk." Everything stayed the same. There was the same level of regard for the clerk. And I also in Sandwich, and this wasn't the clerk, but the people in Sandwich voted to keep their treasurer elected. So I think the trend is towards preserving our direct democracy, and I think that that is the way to go. For DeKalb, the biggest thing is a clerk who knows his or her oath of office and what the clerk's office is about understands that if there is a conflict between the clerk and the staff can't fire the clerk, and only the electorate can do that. They can do that by not voting for that clerk the next time, and there's a watchdog aspect to the elected clerk in watching proceedings and knowing as much as possible to be able to evaluate those proceedings and whether people are doing things in the right way, as I mentioned before. So absolutely elected clerk. I think I support that for a number of reasons, and I always will, particularly in DeKalb.
Thanks. Brad, you're next. Same question. DeKalb voters in November rejected an advisory referendum which asked for public opinion on whether to keep the city clerk's office an elected or appointed role. This was the third such referendum to have this outcome. The others were in 2006 and 2013. Do you agree that this office should remain an elected one? Why or why not?
Well, I support the voters. I support that decision. Again, I think that the result of the leadership of the city is a reaction to what has happened over past years. And the voters have spoken. They spoke in DeKalb, they spoke in Sycamore, and I think that's reflective of our county. I think our county is one that respects all elected offices and wishes to keep those because they feel that there is great value to that. And I certainly understand that. I do know that there is a trend that's happening within the state of Illinois, and that is also happening in various parts of the country, where some of these municipal offices, particularly clerk, but as Lynn said, Sandwich was considering, making the treasurer office appointed, that making those positions appointed. And we'll have to see where that goes. I think that requires greater investigation, especially to know why are these communities turning to that role, and why are we the community and we as a county maintaining that we want this as an elected office. I support that. I support what our voters want. I support the fact any opportunity to be able to serve as an elected official, I think, is the right way to go. And so I support that decision. And if I were to be fortunate enough to be elected into that role, I know I will give it all of my focus and all of my attention and contribute and be an asset to this community.
Thank you. Steve, same question. DeKalb voters in November rejected an advisory referendum which asked for public opinion on whether to keep the city clerk's office an elected or appointed role. This was the third such referendum to have this outcome. The others were in 2006 and 2013. Do you agree that this office should remain an elected one? Why or why not?
Absolutely, yes. It should remain an elected position, and it needs to be restored to a functioning level so that it can attract good people who are willing to stay and fulfill the duties of the office. A couple of things of why from the inside. Brad mentioned that he's familiar with the Open Meetings Act. And one of the things that the clerk would do, regardless of how much capacity is bestowed on the clerk in the position, would be in attending the closed sessions. And the closed sessions, from my experience, sometimes started to stray into conversations that were not appropriate, and in a closed session. And the clerk needs to be independent enough to speak up and say, we shouldn't be moving in that direction on this conversation. And so I think that's an important role for the city clerk to be elected, because if it's appointed, the city manager is running the show in those meetings oftentimes, and we wouldn't want the clerk to be beholden to the city manager in those circumstances. If I could tell you a little story about what happened also. This is a previous city manager, previous council. None of the staff or the council were present at the time when I was city clerk. And one of the finance people came down the hall and said that she had a request for a payment for $12,000 from a downtown association, and which the city had an agreement with. And in that agreement, I didn't recall anything that was related to this. So I said, well, let me pull it up. And so I went to the file and pulled the agreement, and it was very short. We read through it, and I said, I don't see anything in here where that payment should be authorized. So I said, I suggested that she consult with the city manager about whether it should be paid or not. A few days later, I asked, did he authorize it? And she said yes. At that point, I decided that it was important to tell the city, or the mayor. And when I told the mayor was very upset and made his upset clear to the city manager. Then the city manager decided that he was going to come screaming down the hall at me, saying that I was interfering in areas that I shouldn't be. And all I did was to recommend appropriate protocol, and then to inform the mayor when I thought something was wrong. Mm-hmm. Those are important roles for an elected position to hold.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to our next question. Brad, you can answer this one first. So it sort of goes along this theme that all three of you have been talking about, which is, how to restore the office that has seen a lot of turnover over the last couple of years, over the last decade, really. Beyond just serving out a full term, which also has not happened in 10 years plus, what other additional changes do you think would be necessary to help restore this office, Brad?
Well, I think that there has to be some willingness and some I think collaboration with the elected officials, the leadership at City Council, that is the mayor, on restoring or collaborating on making sure that those duties of city clerk exist, and that will be fulfilled. I think that I bring some a spirit of collaboration, a spirit of getting things done, um, and I think I bring some leadership and some ideas that will I think help the city clerk evolve and get back to a position where um, it once was. And again, but I think it has to be you have to work with the leadership in that capacity. You also have to be able to work in the staff in that capacity because right now the staff has all those duties. They so now you're going if whoever of the three of us gets elected, we're going to go and have to go over and reassume a number of those duties. Um, and so I know I have the skill set. I know I have the experience, and I know I have the ability to work with leadership. I do have experience in working with government. I have worked great experience of working with this administration, and so I feel fairly confident that we could do that. Work in a collaborative effort, fulfill all the duties of city clerk, restore it to a office of continuity and respectability and professionalism. And I'm looking forward to that opportunity.
Thank you, Brad. We're going to do Steve next. Again, same question. Beyond just serving out the full term, Steve, what additional changes would you want to see happen in this office to ensure that that restoration that you guys keep talking about?
Well, one thing would be to better implement a historical record in the municipal code. Now, what I mean by that is that if you look at the municipal code, in each section, there will be a little what I call a bug in parentheses at the end of the title or at the end of a subsection, and in it, it gives you it identifies the year and the ordinance number within that year that made changes to the municipal ordinance or the municipal code. And so if someone is curious about, well, why did the city change the code to make it say what it says today? They could go into the municipal code, and at the end of the section that they're concerned about, they would see the little bug that tells them when the resolution was passed that made those changes. And so they can just directly go and look up that resolution. And those bugs have not been adequately in recent years have not been adequately plugged in. And so therefore that information is harder to come by. There are those bugs in there that do indicate that, but they are not as extensive as they used to be. And that makes it difficult for people to trace back why certain changes in the municipal code were made. That's just an example of that kind of thing representing the interests of the public and not the interests of an administrative bureaucracy. Because I spent 12 years on the city council, and one important role that the city council holds is to hold the city manager who runs the city accountable for carrying out the desires of and the goals of the council. And there's always a temptation for an administrator, and I'm not saying that this is true of our current city manager. I'm just saying this is true of city managers or managers in general, that they would prefer it to be an easier road, so they will take that easier route oftentimes. That's the temptation. And the council's role is to hold them accountable to thoroughly examining the best road for the city, even if it's more work for the management to get there.
Thank you, Steve. Lynn, same question to you. Beyond just serving out the full term, What other additional changes would you want to see happen in the office to address, these long-term turnovers, restore it to what you think it needs to be?
Well, I think first we have to redefine the problem. I think there's been a lot of groupthink that has gone on because in what business could you break up a job position, reduce or eliminate the pay, allow rudeness and other things, and other unprofessional conduct towards the employee, and then blame the employee for an extreme turnover issue. So no, that's not correct. So what we need to do is face the reality that the city has a lot of responsibility here, not just the clerks. This means the clerk must remind them of that and point it out, even if it's unpopular. And of course, the elected clerk doesn't get fired for being unpopular with the city. Getting it on the agenda and to start talking about negotiation. So what I'm looking at is the clerk being a transitional role at this point. So it's going to be, staking out the territory on what's non-negotiable. To me, covering the elections, the city's role in the elections, and also meeting attendance. Those are extremely important, but also the transitional role in getting people to understand that the referendum means that they need to start from scratch, and they've got that backup. They've got the two people doing the same role, and we start selecting which of these duties and responsibilities would stay with somebody else and which would go to the clerk. And a lot of that is about talking about what the public wants. So my understanding in 2016, for example, the clerk in 2016 was put on the spot because somebody found out that she wasn't at City Hall very often. She ended up having a public meeting. I guess there were probably about 15 of us there, best of my memory, and we found out that she didn't know where the seal was and didn't and how it was being used, because she didn't come in unless somebody called her to come in. So a lot of things I did when I came in 2018 was I made sure of the arrangements of the seal, because I saw how upset people were that the clerk didn't know where it was. So I didn't surrender the seal. I didn't allow a facsimile of my signature to be made. And I did put in office hours, and I had an arrangement with my deputy for who was going to do what. I didn't have to sign everything myself all the time, but I did want to know exactly who did if it wasn't me. And I tried to make it myself as much as possible. So when somebody said that I was impeding business by hoarding the seal, that was exactly when people started doing things behind my back. So I won't get into details there, but okay. So
if you could wrap it up, that'd be great.
I know. I'm sorry. So anyway, facing reality, getting on the agenda, putting unprofessional conduct on blast. And let's see what we can come up with, maybe a little negotiation and put together something in 4 years that we can be proud of.
Thank you.
All right. The next question goes to Steve. Do you commit to serve out your full term if elected?
Yes, I would. I guess that's quicker than 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you.
If there was a way to restore the clerk and in shorter time than that, I would be glad to pass it on to someone. But the problem is that the salary is locked in for 4 years, and short of any legislation, the salary could not be raised, even for a new clerk in this term. I mean, state legislation is what I'm talking about. If that happened, then I would be glad to hand it over to someone elected under those circumstances. So, in other words, I'm not going to run if the salary is raised in the future.
All right, thanks. Lynn, same question. Do you commit to serve out your full term if elected?
Yes, I did it before. I'll do it again. Hopefully I want to bounce off of something that Steve brought up and go back for a minute to the flexibility of the clerk's office. So the city clerk in Sandwich, the clerk's job is part-time and she's elected, but she has a full-time job. How is that? It's because she also has another office that is compatible with the clerk, and that's the office of the collector. And she is appointed by the mayor for that. And that's how they make a job that is part-time in Sandwich an appealing position because it is full-time with benefits. As a matter of fact, there was at least one alderman in Sandwich who came up with an idea to strengthen the independence of the city clerk's office. He said that he was concerned about the independence of the office because the mayor is the one who appoints her as a collector, that end of it. And I think he was talking about something about having the whole council make the decision or something like that, just to make that job that much more independent. So, you know, the way that we see things in DeKalb, there are some really interesting and appealing other ideas out there that maybe we should explore as we're trying to put things back together.
Thank you for that. Brad, same question. Do you commit to serve out your full term if elected?
Like Steve and Lynn, I intend to do that. That's my intent. God willing, will stay healthy and sound mind and body. And I think for the clerk's job, we all need that. And I think we all possess that. And yeah, that would be my intent. Again, I think it's one thing as we've and the candidates here, we're all of a certain vintage, and we can tell you that 4 years goes rather quickly when you get to a certain age. Steve's laughing because I think we're exactly the same age, and I think that I know, kind of following up on what Lynn said, I think that it might take a good 4 years to be able to get some, if you have some initiatives and some ideas and some creativity of what you want to try to accomplish in that office, it may take a full 4 years to implement that. That's in almost any role. If you're going to be a person who's going to serve the role successfully, efficiently, and effectively, you're probably going to have to do it for 4 years, or at least the length of your term.
Thank you. All right. Last closing question. Why should people vote for you, Lynn?
I think it's because of my experiences and my, I guess, institutional knowledge of the clerk's office and of DeKalb's history, because I think, the history keeps haunting us. So none of this is about any one mayor or city manager or council. This has been going on across councils. To me, that's kind of so we need to look at the structure, certainly, part-time versus full-time compensation, and what the duties end up being in the next iteration. But also, let's challenge the culture that says it's okay to try to make somebody quit because if you can't fire them, let's make them quit. And honestly, I've got some hair-raising stories about what has happened to people in that job, including people who were very good clerks. Anyway, as I said, I do see the role of the next elected clerk as being transitional. Come in, make some changes, bring in the voice of our voters, certainly, find those people of good faith on council. And by the way, some of these this not so great conduct that I've been referring to actually is an indicator of an imbalance of power. And I do not believe for 1 minute that it only affects the clerk. In fact, I think the clerk was the canary in the coal mine. I do believe that council in some ways has become subordinate to the city manager's office. And this may or may not be kind of a feature of the council manager form of government and all of that informational asymmetry. But nevertheless, we need to do something about it if we want healthy functioning of each office in the city of DeKalb. So as I said, it won't be, this next term won't be about just the traditional responsibilities. It will be about collecting information about what the public expects and using that information to regularly advocate and negotiate for the changes that will enable the clerk's office to succeed once again, as it did in the not so olden golden days. It wasn't that long ago. But we got off the path. We can get back on again.
Thanks. Brad, same question. Why should people vote for you?
Well, I think because I'm committed to making DeKalb a great place to live, work, and play. I've made my home here for decades. I love the community. I love its citizens. Like any community, we are not without our challenges. Sometimes we have some very big challenges. But I've also been one who's been involved in trying to address some of those challenges. Not just by myself. You can't do that. You have to have some colleagues. You have to have collaborators. You have to have people that are willing to get on board and get the job done. I'm known as somebody who gets the job done. I'm respected. I have experience, and I think that I'm the best person for this role. And I look forward to having the opportunity. Again, this is a great opportunity, great format to be able, for all of us to be able to share our experience. And our passion for this community. There's a reason the three of us are running for this. We all have a passion for our community, and we all have a stake in it, and it's well documented. So I think that I provide an option for voters uh, as somebody who has not held this role before, but is very knowledgeable about municipal government, very knowledgeable about this community, and very familiar to voters in the city of DeKalb.
Thank you. Steve, same question. Why should people vote for you?
Well, if you take into account 12 years on the city council, in which I was able to see how the functions of the city work, and then my 3 years as city clerk, that experience is greater than the other candidates. Some people would have blamed me for the disaster that the clerk's office has been in the last 13 years. And after my resignation, of which I was pressured into resigning from mistakes that I made, in which the city manager said that he was going to take me to court on Monday. This was Thursday. And I foolishly succumbed to that pressure and resigned, later to find out that my transgression was akin to a traffic ticket, according to a municipal attorney that I later talked to. And so I firmly regret having prematurely resigned under those circumstances. But let's be clear, it was the city manager at that time who decided to press the city council to basically denude the office. And that's what created the string of problems in the city clerk's office that we've talked about today. And because of these circumstances, I'm the most experienced, and I have the greatest motivation to fulfill this, the restoration of the clerk, as redemption for my premature resignation in 2012.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us this evening. We hope that our readers and potential voters will find this helpful to help inform them before they get to the ballot. Just a reminder to our viewers, this is not the only way that you can learn about candidates who are running for races in your community. The Daily Chronicle does have an Election Central webpage. It's www.shawlocal.com/daily-chronicle/election. You can go in there, you can read about other races besides the city clerk. You can look at candidate questionnaires, which are profiles of all the candidates that we have here in their own words, talking about their campaigns. The election is April 1st, but early voting is already underway, so you can vote now if you want to. And we thank everybody for joining us tonight.